Hey guys, what's happening? Aaron here. Well, it's come down to this. The final review. Happy 2019 too. Yeah, it's sort of a weird thing, you know. I've been doing these reviews for 7 years now. I started, first review was uploaded January 28th, 2012. And now it's February 6th, 2019. So, it's kind of the end of the line. So, I've been doing this for 7 years, and I've reviewed every game I'd wanted to review, and now it's time to move on to something else. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Thank you much for subscribing. I appreciate all the views and comments and things like that. Like I said before, this will be my final review. Or I should say my final game review. What's going to happen with my channel after this, I'm not really sure yet. I'm probably going to take a little break for a while. Work on other things and whatnot. But I'm not totally done uploading content to my channel. I do have some other new ideas for videos and things like that, so if you like my review style or you like my videos, please stay tuned, because I'm not done yet. Gonna be taking a break, but not down and out yet. So again, happy 2019, and enjoy my final review, version 2.0 of the very first review I ever did, Super Metroid. Thanks guys. Bye.
In 1994, war was beginning.
Just kidding. Wow. With that sentence, I started my very first review. That was 7 years ago already. How time flies. But, as with all good things, they must come to an end. Thus, the point of this review. I give you the Super Metroid version 2.0 review. For those of you who have seen my original video, this will be a combination of different things. Many new, some from the original review. First things first, a little intro. Released in 1994 on the Super Motherfucking Nintendo, Super Metroid, I'll forever remember fondly, because I didn't actually play through it back in the early 90s when it first came out. Hell, I didn't even play it, period. Why, you ask? Mainly because I wasn't a fan of the original that came out on the NES. So I didn't really have any interest in this new Metroid. Besides, at that age, I was more into Mario, and the other big-name mascots at the time. The other big factor of why I didn't play Super Metroid back in the day was that I couldn't figure out how the fuck to get past what is usually referred to as the noob tunnel. This is fairly early in the game, and all you have to do is run, not walk, across these disappearing blocks in order to advance the game. For some stupid reason, I never figured out you could run, since I never read the manual, and the game doesn't tell you can either. So I was never able to make it past this part, so I got frustrated and left the game alone. Fast forward to sometime in the late 90s. Maybe early 2000s, was getting heavy into emulation of all kinds of systems. Decided to give Super Metroid another chance. This time, however, the internet was on my side. Figured out how to run, and easily made it past the disappearing blocks section. Then, holy shit, the game really starts opening up. All these years, I'd had no idea. Wow. So, the rest, as they say, is history. I started playing every new Metroid game that came out, still to this day. Have never gone back and played the original. Figured with the remake on Game Boy Advance, there wasn't much reason to. I guess if you're a purist you could, but I always stick with the newer version. From then on, I was a total fan of the Metroid series. Then, the series pretty much went dark after Metroid Prime 3 was released in 2007. But that's a different story altogether. Onwards to the review. Enough talk! In the canon of the Metroid series, Super Metroid falls after Metroid 2, which came out on the OG Game Boy, but before Metroid Other M on the Nintendo Wii. Talk about a jump in the timeline, at least for us gamers. Other M came out 15 years after Super Metroid, and back then, I wasn't about to wait around that long to find out what happens to Samus. I would now, as I did with Final Fantasy 15, and holy crap, what a total shit show that release turned out to be, huh? Anyways, the game begins very ominously, with things being very quiet, almost creepy. And the main title hits, with dead people laying all around, and a soul Metroid squeaking at you. It sets a very interesting scenario. You're given a short recap of what happened at the end of the original Metroid, to serve as a bridge to this game, if, like me, you never played it. That's one of the nice things I've always enjoyed about the Metroid series. You're given story, but it's very simple and to the point. At least in earlier games. It isn't bogged down by droning dialogue or overly long cutscenes. You're only given the bare amount of information, and the rest is on you to figure out. Ridley attacks the space station and steals the baby Metroid, before blowing the whole fucking thing up. You pursue him to planet Zebes, where the entirety of the game takes place. The planet is divided into 6 separate regions, each with their own unique properties, elements, and enemies. You land your ship in Criteria, and you're off and running. You start off with just your regular power suit and arm cannon, but along the way you'll pick up all sorts of upgrades, weapons, and fun shit to play with. Weapons like the wave beam, grapple beam, and ice beam, missiles, super missiles, power bombs, and the fucking screw attack, which turns Samus into a whirling kaleidoscope of death. Also new to this game is the speed booster. This lets you zoom around at maximum speed, being able to run through certain walls, and allows you to shine spark. What shine sparking? Think powered up super jumping. This allows you to sequence break this game like a motherfucker, but more on that later. As you make your way through the deep tunnels and corridors of the game, you'll encounter a whole host of weird and strange creatures. Unfortunately, they all want to kill you! Flying ones, crawling ones, other zany things jumping around, you know. You'll face off against a group of huge bosses on your way to the final confrontation with Mother Brain in the planet center, Turian. Shoot that fucker in the fucking face, or fucking eye, then run the hell out of there as the whole fucking planet blows up. Ta-da! I know that story explanation seemed a little succinct, but that's pretty much all the story is in this game. The majority of the rest of the time you'll just be running around exploring stuff. Speaking on the design and overall aesthetics of this game, it is legendary. You're talking about one of the, if not the definitive Super Nintendo games of all time. I mean, all time. And I know that I may be rustling some feathers with that one. Let's be honest. Everyone has their favorites, or what they think is the best Super Nintendo game of all time. This just happens to be mine. The team at Nintendo R&D 1, who were responsible for the original Metroid, just knocked the ball out of the fucking park with this game. Just looking at the fluidity of how Samus runs, or flips through the air, you can really see the attention to detail that the design team put into each area. Okay, so sometimes the backgrounds could use a little more going on, but that's just nitpicking. The areas of the game are very well designed, each having its own unique properties and creatures. The nice thing is that none of the enemies in the game really pose any kind of significant threat. Usually just a missile or two, and they're toasted! As I was saying earlier, you'll come across weapons and other upgrades that help you navigate the planet easier, and faster as well. The speed booster is probably the most well known, as it allows Samus to turn into a blinding blue flash. It also allows you to scale vertical shafts extremely quickly, and perform huge power jumps out in the open areas of Criteria. You also have the grapple beam, which, after watching any speedrun, you don't really need it to complete the game, nor do you need it if you're going for 100%, but back in the day we didn't really know any better. It lets you swing from certain blocks, allowing access to more areas, and also can be used for some fun tricks against bosses, like frying the fuck out of Dragon! Returning to the bosses discussion, again, none are really that difficult. I think Nintendo designed it so they were a fun boss fight, but unless you're just screwing around or don't know what you're doing, I think they designed the entire game like that. The game overall is not that hard. I think they placed a greater emphasis on exploration than straight up blasting through everything in your way. I prefer it like that. Most of the time while running around, you find yourself in empty corridors with no enemies, but there's secrets to be found all over the place. I mean, a lot of secrets. Hidden missile tanks, energy tanks, secret pathways, shortcuts, etc. That's why in all the years of playing, I've never successfully 100%ed this game. I think the highest I've ever gotten is probably around 72%, I think. Again, from a design perspective, that's what these games are all about. Finding secrets that you had no idea were even there in the first place. So much so that I'm still finding things I didn't know were there 25 years later. To me, Super Metroid is basically the pinnacle of Super Nintendo programming and design. There is absolutely nothing about this game that I don't like, nor do I have any issues with. Well, I guess I always wished it would be like 2 to 3 times as long. Really, the only thing I could possibly come up with that might be perceived as a negative, at least in my book, is that sometimes running around Meridia can get a tad confusing because there's so many different levels crisscrossing each other. Plus, there's the quicksand. On the audio side, everything shines just as brightly. First up, the music. Yes, I'm well aware that the majority of Metroid games don't have much in the way of a bombastic score or memorable chiptunes, but Super Metroid on the music level also is awesome. There isn't a ton of tracks, but those that are implemented are composed so well as to set the atmosphere and completely envelop Samus, and you as well, in the desolate, dark tunnels of the planet. Especially the wrecked ship. Speaking of which, is it ever explained where the wrecked ship came from? Or what happened to the beings that were on it? I don't think it is. Is it supposed to be assumed that Ridley crashed on the planet with it? Does anybody know? Or is it left up to the player to use their imagination on? Sometimes, as they usually say, the absence of music is better, as is the case when you're running around on Criteria. Just the sound of the rain and the thunder off in the distance is all that is needed. I think the music allows the player to explore, and not be rushed by a thundering beat or loud noises or anything like that. Just walking around, attempting to figure out how to open certain doors, where to go next, etc. Sound effects once again are great, with explosions, laser beams, weird alien noises, and energy blasts, all reminding us from when the greatest console ever was in its prime. Besides the few lines at the beginning of the game, there's no other spoken dialogue at all. So there's that. Even Samus's boots hitting the ground sounds solid. Well, and shooting Mother Brain in the face with the Hyper Beam is really fucking annoying because she screams every time. But anyways, overall, Super Metroid is a monumental title in the history of video games, and indeed, one of the best on the Super Nintendo. It's easily my favorite Metroid of all time, and as Nintendo has basically forgotten one of its greatest franchises ever at this point, I seriously doubt we'll ever see a game that can top it. Even if they remade it into an HD version, I doubt fans will ever give up the original. It's just too good. Too fun, too memorable, too perfect? That's up to interpretation, I guess. Sadly, the only way to currently play the game is to have an original Super Nintendo or the newer SNES Classic, as the title is not currently available in any digital format whatsoever. Well, that and there's emulation too. Again, fuck you, Nintendo. Not that I could buy it, even though I would, as I said goodbye to Nintendo after I had my Wii. But that's another story. I had a lot of fun going back and redoing one of my favorite games I've ever reviewed the way it should have been done the first time. But I was just starting out way back then. As I've said before, this is my final game review for this channel. However, it is not my final video for my channel. I'm currently working on some new ideas for the future, and we'll have to wait and see what happens. Till then, as always, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing. Please go check this masterpiece out. You won't regret it. See you on the flip side, guys. This is Aaron for Quantium Production Presents, signing off. For now.